University of Alaska Disability Services Annual Conference. All access, all the time. Sharing space together. When we come together online, we often don't feel connected to our land and can mistakenly imagine ourselves as disconnected from physical space. In reality, we join these virtual sessions from offices and homes built on the traditional, unceded lands of Indigenous tribes and peoples across North America. Disability Services would like to express gratitude for access to this beautiful, majestic land and for its caretakers. We also acknowledge that our shared virtual space exists because of physical infrastructure. Zoom servers connect us based on resources and availability. When you join us virtually, you're borrowing resources from other communities that make this sharing possible. If you don't know the Indigenous history of the land you occupy and would like to learn more, please visit native.land.ca. The University of Alaska acknowledges the Alaska Native Nations upon whose ancestral lands our campuses reside. University of Alaska Anchorage.
Dena'ina, Atnadine, Alutiiq, Sugpiaq, Chugachmute, and Eyak peoples.
University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Dina people of the lower Tanana River.
University of Alaska Southeast.
Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian peoples.
Welcome to the session.
My name is Carrie. I am a mental health counselor and a disability support services specialist at the University of Alaska Southeast. I will be facilitating this student panel this morning, which is made up of a really great group of students. I'm so excited to hear some of their experiences, as well as appreciate so much that they're willing to share these with us today. I'll have them introduce themselves in just a minute. We have 10 questions that the students will be answering, and I will be inviting questions and comments after each question. We will end with more time for questions if there are any, but I want to encourage folks to please ask if you do have questions. And so the students on this panel, we have Janine Bryan, we have Katie Ferguson, Martha Hood, and Katie Lester. I'll go in that order in order to have them introduce themselves. And so Janine, would you go ahead and get us started, please?
Sure. Good morning, and I wanted to apologize that I was late. I was helping a student that was just finishing a project, and it was due in 5 minutes, so we were trying to hurry to get it done. So again, good morning. My name is Janine Bryan, and I am studying at the University of Alaska Southeast for a master's in special education. My schooling was not always very pretty, I have to admit. I was diagnosed at the age of 6 for specific learning disability, and reading was definitely a struggle, and so was writing for me. I was very fortunate that my aunt was a school psychologist, and she advocated to my parents to get me some help. I went to a private school, so I got tutored by a nun, and then I access services from our public school. My parents were very supportive. Education was always about meeting my goals and being successful, and they were very big advocates for me. I went to the University of Florida and graduated in a BA in political science and international relations. I spent some time working at the UN and for the governor of Florida. I married the only Alaskan out of 40,000 undergrad, and I've been living in Alaska for the last 19 years, love it, and would never want to go back. I planned on never going back to school when I left University of Florida, but as I worked and volunteered in my son's school, I found out that I had a knack for helping children that were struggling in school because I had the same struggles as them growing up. And my principal that I had volunteered with asked me to step up as a sub for special education. And at first I wasn't keen on the idea, but anyway, long and behold, I started the job and loved it. And now I've been with Anchorage School District for the last 5 years, and I'm pursuing my teacher certificate through University of Alaska Southeast, and I am loving it. And I will pass it on to Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie Ferguson. I'm a UAS pre-nursing student. I was diagnosed at 5 with ADHD and dyspraxia. And my when I was first diagnosed, my grandma was a special ed teacher, so she spoke the language and she knew how to like ask for stuff and give me the best help I could get. And at when I was going into middle school, my parents decided that homeschool would be the best option for me. And I thrived in homeschool, and it was just the best thing I could have done for my reading and spelling. And um, my experience with disability services, I've been working with them for 3 semesters now, and it's been amazing. It's always nice to know that they're there to have my back, and if I have a problem with something or I just need a little bit more support, I can email them, and they're always like there within a day. It's like, yes, what do you need? Let's jump on a Zoom call. Let's figure this out. Very nice. I'll pass it on to Martha.
Hello, everyone. My name is Martha Hood. I was diagnosed when I was a senior in high school. I had been homeschooled for my entire life, and my mom always knew that there were areas that I struggled in. But because she could accommodate me without having specific accommodations with a diagnosis, she didn't get me diagnosed. And then I was a senior, and I was really struggling to pass the high school qualifying exam, which was the final year that they had. That was the year that I was a senior. And so she approached the homeschool organization I was a part of and had me tested for specific learning disabilities. And I was diagnosed with dysgraphia and dyscalculia. And that was extremely helpful because I then went on to UAF, and having those accommodations as a college student was extremely helpful. I earned a double major in psychology and justice from UAF. And I always knew that I wanted to work with kids, but I didn't want to be a teacher. And so that is why I am earning my master's in school counseling, as I get to work with kids, but I don't have to be in a classroom all day. And I will pass it on to Katie now.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. And thanks for the offer to be here. I am actually new to the world of disability. I did struggle growing up in school with different reading and different items and things like that, but I was not diagnosed with vision loss or being blind with a little bit of residual vision until the last few years. I received the reality check in about 2017, and from there became more aware of situations and my circumstances. So I am still learning in a lot of different ways with this, and I'm thankful that I had this able to work with everybody. I am attending UAA for a social work. I want to help others with advocacy as well as just being mental. There's a lot of overwhelming circumstances with each individual situation that someone has, in giving them the support and connecting them to the resources that they need. So I am very thankful for those that I have has helped me through these last few years.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate so much your introductions of your experiences, as well as where you're at in your education, and where you're going too. That's also kind of what I hear. I appreciate so much. Thank you. So we'll get started with our questions. And so this first question that we'll be going to: what is the greatest challenge you face with accessing education? And Martha and Katie Lester have decided to answer this question. And so, Martha, would you mind starting us off?
Yeah, so for me, the greatest challenge that I've faced with accessing education is the general lack of education surrounding specific learning disabilities and what they entail. I haven't experienced it so much during grad school simply because of the program that I'm in. They're all counselors and mental health professionals, so they understand what learning disabilities are. But during undergrad, I had a lot of professors speak down to me, not take me seriously as a student, ask me generally inappropriate questions about my disabilities. I had one professor ask me how I was able to be a competitive swimmer on the UAF swim team if I had disabilities, and also just make comments about it, and generally make me feel lesser than other students. Um, Also struggling with advocating for myself. I was diagnosed so late compared to so many other students that I didn't have the skills of advocating for myself. And I didn't have the confidence either. And learning to advocate for myself the last couple of years of undergrad and in grad school, the last 3 years, has made a huge difference in how I'm treated by professors and how I see myself. Just as a little freshman and sophomore in college, I didn't feel comfortable asking for my accommodations. I would ask professors, instead of letting them know, I would ask, instead of saying, I would like my 2 days, I'm going to use my 2 days of accommodation, I would just say, would it be possible if I could? Which then opened it up for those inappropriate comments of, well, you're going to fall behind. You're lucky you get those accommodations that other students don't. So just dealing with the stigma that surrounds learning disabilities.
Thank you, Martha. Katie?
Yeah, she's been pretty good in a lot of things. I mean, I think some of it I'll just tag on to some of, and I had one of my big struggles was in regards to knowing what I needed to advocate for, being new, and going to school for the first time a decade later. Well, not first time. So I've got an AA and administrative assistants and associates in liberal arts, but it's been 10 years since I've gone to school, and knowing what accommodations are needed was a big challenge. And then to add to that, it was explaining what the challenge or what the issue is, if there's a technical or other situation, um, trying to get someone to understand what it is that I'm actually struggling with. Um, those were some of the big issues that I had. The other one is assignments being accessible, especially within this COVID timeframe and most things online. We a lot of the websites or areas have not been fully accessible. There was one assignment that I had to use and spend an hour and a half just trying to get it done, just because the website wouldn't even work with the speech software program that I do. So it was a big challenge to try to figure out how to complete a task without the accessibility that's needed. So, but everybody's been working really well to helping me, but sometimes it's hard to clarify and truly be on the same page.
Thank you so much, Katie. You've touched on a few topics we've covered in this disability conference already, accessibility as well as assistive technology. And Martha, thank you for speaking to some of the accommodations that you've used and advocated for. Those are really important to put that into perspective. And so I'd like to see if any of our other panelists would like to answer this question. It's okay if you don't, but I just want to make sure you have that opportunity too.
I'll take a
Okay.
I'll take a stab at this. That's okay.
Thanks, Katie. Go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the greatest things that's like challenged me is outside of outside school, but like seeing my brother get ahead of me because my brother's was an AL, like super smart, super into math, and I was a senior in high school doing the same math as my brother who was a freshman in high school, and just like wanting to stay ahead because I was older. I've been doing this for longer. I saw my friends doing calculus. I'm like, I want to be where my friends are because I don't know how to relate to them with school, but I'm being held back and just realizing that this is where I need to be and it's okay that I'm here and not up here, but just trying to relate to other people and knowing that it's okay to be where I need to be to learn successfully and not fall behind and struggle too much.
Thank you, Katie. That perspective is so important. Does anyone from our audience have a question or comment? Okay, and as I said, we will have time at the end if there are any other questions or comments, and we'll pause in between each question as well too. So I'll move on to the next question. How do you approach group projects and group presentations in class? And Martha and Janine have said that they would like to answer this question. So Janine, would you get us started since Martha started us last question?
Sure, no problem. How I approach group projects is, well, it depends on my group. I kind of sit back a little bit and kind of take it all in. I like to process what's going on. Sometimes I prefer to take the lead in the project, like, oh, I can do this and I'm really good at doing this. And, or I will tend to be lay back and see what everybody else wants to do. I do not disclose that I have a learning disability to anyone, and it's never been a problem in any of our group presentations or projects here at the University of Alaska Southeast. And I feel comfortable getting my work done. So this was, I think the student population here is very kind. I enjoyed all my presentations so far with all the people I've worked with. And, I do use my accommodations of using, Grammarly or before I present anything. And if I needed additional help, I would seek out the writing center before presenting or sharing with my classmates.
Thank you, Janine. Martha?
So again, I'm going to kind of roll it back to undergrad because they're very different experiences. During my undergrad, I was not comfortable sharing anything with anybody, and so I would always put my the presentations on the front burner and put all my other ones on the back burner, because I didn't want to be that group mate that held everybody back. I would find myself volunteering for tasks where my learning disabilities would not show as easily. So I would offer to do research, or if everybody gave me their information, I could build the slides, and then nobody would have to see how I wrote things. I didn't have to give anybody any of my information. Now I actually do share with a lot of my classmates that I have learning disabilities, which it gives us the ability to request later presentation dates, because with a lot of the presentations that I'm doing in school, there's only 1 or 2 people going per class session. And so I can request to be one of the last groups to present, and that helps with having more time to make sure that I am doing the presentation in a grad level fashion.
Thank you so much, Martha and Janine. Would any of our other panelists like to answer this question?
This is Katie Lester. I'll answer.
Okay, go ahead, Katie. Do you want me to read the question one more time?
No, thank you. Thanks for offering. I put your presentation in an outline, so I've been kind of following along there. With the group presentations and group works, a lot of times I work with various students. I tend to check in with them. We kind of set up a system if to who's going to say what or who's going to do what. Or like one of my courses, we are doing some videos and practice role playing for social work, and my partner and I have worked out different ways for them to let me know when it's my turn or when we are close to a certain amount of time. So we've worked out a few different signals and different things that kind of help us out get through that.
Thank you so much, Katie. Does anyone from our audience have a question? Okay, we'll move on to the next question. So this question is, what do you wish individuals without disabilities knew? And this is Janine and Katie Ferguson, who have elected to answer this question.
Is it okay if I go first?
Sure, that's okay, Katie, go ahead.
Okay. Like, one thing I wish people understood about disabilities and people with those is, like, this is more speaking with like learning disabilities, that we're smart. We just work in different ways. We don't fit in the normal student box. It takes us more time to do research, write a paper, and that we might need some more support in certain things. Like, I needed some more support with spelling and grammar, with editing papers, and with a calculator for math. And just knowing that, yeah, I have more things to help me, but I'm not stupid, I'm not dumb, we're incredibly smart. We're just smart in other ways, in different ways. And that some people need to fidget in class, and knowing that that's okay for them to fidget with class because that's how they think and how they process. And I feel like there's a stigma around classes, and you need to pay attention, you need to be taking notes, and then I end up doodling on note cards because I can't think unless I'm doing something with my hands, and telling my professors, like, yeah, it's okay for me to do this. This is how I focus. If I look like I'm not paying attention, I am. And yeah, that's all I got.
Thank you so much, Katie. I think that's a really important point that you've made, that different ways of paying attention and how you manage that as well too. Thank you. Janine?
Hi. Like Katie, I feel like we're always fighting to prove ourselves. Like we're always fighting to prove that we are capable, we are intelligent, and we know we are, but it's trying to show that to everybody and to prove it that yes, we are going to need more time. We are going to need time to process. We are going to need our accommodations to be successful. Without them, school will be extremely difficult for us. And that's why, we need to advocate for ourselves and let you know that, hey, this is why we need them. I mean, I can tell you every time I write a paper, I always feel like writing is probably my biggest struggle at this point in life. I can tell you I go through 7 or 8 drafts before I will turn it into a professor. Why? Because I want it perfect. And I don't want anyone to say, oh, there she is, she's just stupid. Because we've been fighting against that stigma since kindergarten and first grade. And that is something that is very hard to get over with, and to prove yourself that you are capable of doing that stuff when you've been told since you're little that you're not. And I think that is the biggest struggle. I think, and teaching the next generation that we're going to have to fight through it. We have to have that grit in order to be successful is probably one of the biggest things that we learn.
Thank you so much, Janine. And I hear your passion in making change, as well as identifying that stigma is not helpful. Would anyone else on our panel like to answer this question?
I'd love to, if that's possible.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, don't 100% realize that the education system within the United States is set up exclusively to benefit neurotypical students. The sitting at a desk all day, how writing 15-page papers, the research portion, not everybody learns that way. And it can make it difficult to feel like you are a successful student when your brain doesn't work that way. I've done a lot of research in my program for papers and assignments on learning disabilities. And like Katie said, we are intelligent. I think a lot of people hear learning disability and think intellectual disability. It's not an intellectual disability. We are of average or above average intelligence. It's just that we learn and we show that knowledge in different ways than neurotypical students. So
Thank you so much, Martha. That is an important distinction, as well as I appreciate all of our panelists sharing your experiences with this, the pain that's happened, as well as the successes that you've had. Does anyone from our audience have questions or comments? Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to the next question. So the question is, how do you communicate with faculty and staff about your disability? How would you like faculty and staff to communicate with you about your disability? And Katie Lester has said that she would like to answer this question. Go ahead, Katie, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thanks so much. I've noticed, even though I've only been dealing with having a disability for the last few years or so, but I've been connected with the Independent Living Center throughout the Kenai Peninsula and several other different agencies, as well as my own personal experience, that most of us just, if you have a question, ask it, don't assume. I like to prefer to be open with my teachers and my professors, because on some of it, like for example, last year, I just started out and everything got thrown onto online, and one teacher, when it didn't go directly through DSS, and when it talked to me about accommodations until they got the letter, which they got it the day before, and then a lot of assignments and difficulties, especially when a lot of things were coming up to where they weren't accessible. A lot of the times throughout that, I was worried, like my first response is, did I do this right? Am I navigating correctly? Was it my fault that it's not accessible? And so having the open conversations with the faculty, staff, and even other students, like with the accessibility, having alt text on pictures makes a huge difference. Audio description, it's going to tell me what's happening and give me all the details that I need, that someone with sight or doesn't need a speech software program or audio description to actually tell them what's happening. Is there a fight? Is there a conversation? Where's the scene? What's the location? All these details are major information, especially in the social work program, of what's happening, what's going on, that it's so important for the success. And in turn, it's a win-win situation when we work together and communicate and find the best solutions for each person.
Thank you so much, Katie. That individualized experience is something that we promote so much in the disability services offices, because you're right, it's so important to have that individualized experience. Would any of our other panelists like to answer this question?
I'd like to.
Go ahead, Katie. Katie Fraser.
Yeah. Just it'd be, at least in my experience, and like this semester primarily, it'd be nice if teachers or faculty members would, they get the letter from disability services and just reach out to the student before class or even the first couple weeks of class and just go, what do you need from me? What can I what can I help you with? Is like something we can come up with for like when you just can't focus, you go out in the hallway for a minute and just having the teacher reach out initially instead of the student going like 5 weeks into class going, we need to come up with something because this is not working. It would be nice if this professor would do the initial reach out instead of having it always be the student.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Katie. That is an important piece. There's multiple ways to support as well as multiple ways to connect. And at times the responsibility is the students, and at times it might be important for the faculty members or the staff members to make that initial connection as well too. Thank you. Any questions from our audience? So Katie, this is your question.
Carrie,
Oh,
sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead, Marissa.
I was just thinking, even if an instructor doesn't reach out initially, what ways can instructors show that they are receptive to communication from a student if the student does reach out? What would help the students feel that they're being heard and the instructor is willing to work with them?
Yeah, I think in the DS office, we always do want, at least some acknowledgement or something that can show that they've received that information. But I am curious about from our student panelists, if there is something else that would be helpful besides from just a conversation or maybe an email saying, I got this and understand. Can you think of any other ideas of what would be helpful for you as students to know that your faculty have heard the DS accommodation and understand it?
I think, first of all, I've had a lot of professors that have never even acknowledged that they've received the letter until I spoke up to them. Like, I sent you this email earlier this week. But I think that it would be really helpful if professors were more comfortable with asking specifically, like, what areas do you struggle? What are ways that I could help you? Because I think a lot of professors look at the accommodations and just kind of file that away as information that will come up later. And I think it's just important that they ask, what are some things that you'd like me to know about how you learn, how you complete coursework? What are some things that I could do to really support you as a student beyond the accommodations? Just things like that.
Thank you, Martha.
I think also just reaching out, even setting some time aside and offering to meet either in person or some form to have a private conversation in that regards after the letter has been issued, to give that acknowledgement that, hey, I'm here, let's sit down and talk about this instead of waiting until class.
Thank you, Katie Lester. That's a really important point as well too.
None of my professors have acknowledged they've gotten the letter at all, and just even an email from them going, we got it, or when I email professor hey, did you receive this, can we talk about something accommodations, not going actually following through with that and having a meaningful conversation with them and making it feel like it's okay for someone to fidget during class and not feel like they're not paying attention, because it doesn't look like they are.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, some of the themes I heard, and Katie, you actually said this really well, what do you need from me? That's kind of the question that you'd like faculty to ask, but also I heard a lot of acknowledgement and setting up individual time to get to know you as a student individually. That, again, that individualized process sounds like it's so important, as well as acknowledging that there needs to be some different process that happens in order to help you as a student be able to participate in your class successfully. So there is a question that's come up. Assistive technology is evolving all the time. It would be helpful to know if there's a particular new or a current technology that is helpful for students.
This is Katie. I'll do that. That's also going to be somewhat individualized depending on what someone needs, but there are different places for resources to reach out to see and connect with. For example, I work with the Alaska Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired here in Anchorage, and they've done an amazing job working with me through the technology, because I'm not much of a technical person. So it's been quite a journey. But there's also other agencies that have some, and depending on what your situation is, it's going to vary on the technical support or the devices that you need. So that's a good question to ask and see what's best for the students.
Thank you, Katie. Sounds like connecting with resources and the student and making sure to pair them with what helps the most. So there is one more question in the chat that I'm going to take a minute to propose to our panelists, and then we'll move back to our presentation. If any of the students have taken online or hybrid classes, what are some things that make an online class easy to navigate and succeed in? Are there things that make online classes particularly difficult?
I can answer that one.
Go ahead.
I'm only online as I Zoom for all my classes. And I think the best thing that's been helpful for me was when our professors will post the recording of our class back on, so I can go back through the class and slow down and take the notes to help me be successful. I also think that when we're online, if a teacher is asking or professor is asking questions, most likely the time I can post something and I look at it and check for it, because I don't want to post anything that's going to contain errors or grammar. Sometimes the questions are all the way, it's been a long day. The professor's already on to something next. So if I'm not responding, don't think that I'm not there and I'm not listening or not paying attention. It's just like we moved on too fast. I also think it's helpful when the teacher will check in with individuals, students, and sometime throughout the course sessions to say, oh, okay, on this day, so-and-so is going to log in early to check in, or wait until the end of the class and check in with me when no one else is around to see what I need. Do I need something from them to help me be successful? I think those have been the best strategies that I found for myself during online courses. So.
Thank you. And I think I said that was Martha when really that was Janine. I'm so sorry about that. But it looks like we have a couple of our panelists who'd like to answer that question as well too. So go ahead, Martha.
Yeah, so some of the benefits of online work are that, like, I can have my computer open, take notes when it's not a clinical course. So there's no confidentiality issues. I can record and not just very obviously have a recorder out. But some of the challenges are for my program, they're a once a week, 3-hour long Zoom class. And it is very difficult to sit at a computer for 3 hours watching a screen and be engaged. My brain just does not like to do that. And so luckily this year I was talking to Amber. She spoke to my professors in the clinical courses where there's confidentiality issues. We get breaks throughout the class. And in non-clinical courses, I'm going to be allowed to have my camera off. And then I'm also been allowed to have like fidget stuff, and then made it clear to professors that if I'm not looking at the screen, I'm still paying attention. It just helps me focus to not be looking at the camera the whole time. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Martha. Those are some really helpful resources, as well as ways to kind of engage in the class a little bit differently, but still at a pace that works for you. So thank you so much. Katie Ferguson, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I enjoy online classes more than in person. It's because I feel like I can focus better when I am not having to have my camera on. Last year I only took 2 classes and they were both online, and I just emailed the professors like, hey, I'm not gonna have my camera on. I'm paying attention. But being able to like um like fidget or craft or something, and being able to um have the meeting to listen back to and pause whenever I needed to pause and take the notes I needed to take was really helpful for me.
Thank you so much, Katie. And then Katie Lester, you also had your hand raised.
I did. I've noticed a few different things. I've taken online classes and I'm taking some in-person classes this semester. And I like the presence of other people and having an actual conversation, which is really helpful when you are on Zoom. Some online courses, um, it's there's no sometimes there's not really much connection at all with the professors, and you just this week you have this assignments and go through the different links and website to obtain the information. So that was a little challenging, but I also had a philosophy professor, and it was a lot of information, and a lot of it was some of the visuals we worked out, and it was really nice to know that he was willing to take the extra time to talk with me by phone and help me find ways to um, make sure that we're both on the same page and understanding the information. So it's gone back and forth. But yeah, having those connections with the teachers, and online, some of the times I had limited resources to obtain the information that I was looking for. So that was more trouble when I was trying to show or understand where my problem is with either a teacher or the consortium library or someone. Sometimes it was harder to get to the resources I needed.
Thank you all for your responses to that question, as well as the perspective that you've provided. I'd like to move on to the next question that's currently on our presentation, and it's for Katie Ferguson. Share some barriers that you may have experienced that you did not anticipate experiencing in your coursework.
I knew walking into like a writing or a communications course, there would be a lot of writing and like book work, but just not anticipating the program they wanted us to use for the online textbook not to work. So I didn't have access to an audio copy for the first month and a half of class. That was difficult. And then when we were in class, they had the writing center come down, and they said that they don't edit for grammar, they edit for content, and they won't go through and look at your spelling. And all my professors like, yes, writing centers are amazing. I'm just sitting here like, but that's not what I need help with. I have really good thoughts that I can get on paper. It's just not being able to have the paper spelled right. And that's one thing that I've struggled with is having to go to my mom or my roommates or my friends to have them proofread my paper for me, and not, and everyone talks up this resource that they all like, but it's like, yeah, I'll use it, but I have to go to someone else to edit it first to then go to the writing center. And just having that struggle is difficult.
Yeah, it certainly is. Thank you for sharing that, Katie. And some of the things that I've heard in our presentation are a few different resources that some of our students use, but sometimes navigating them or finding them takes time, which is a challenge, I think, for all students, but at the same time, especially some of our students who work with the Disability Services Office. And at times we can provide additional supports and access to resources, but we ourselves as DS professionals are always wanting to know a little bit more about what works best for individual students so that we can kind of pair them to those resources. There was a comment in the chat from someone that said that Zoom classes allow for immediate confidential chat communication to and from the student and professor. And that was related to our last discourse about online hybrid classes. And so just wanted to make sure that that was something that was acknowledged, that can be private connection to your faculty members. I'm gonna, for the sake of time, move on to our next question. And so our next question is, what could faculty and staff do to make it a better experience for students with disabilities? What advice would you give to faculty and staff about working with students with disabilities? And Katie, Lester and Janine had said that they'd like to answer this question.
With that and more experience, I think some of it too is acknowledgement that after some students understand what they actually need, and if there's a challenge to obtaining a certain way, that maybe finding some way to obtain the items or the accommodation that's needed. If it's not originally offered, maybe looking into possibilities of new resources, I think would be something very helpful. But just working, not I'm helping you, but working as a team, I think is a big thing. Acknowledging that you're a team working together.
Thank you, Katie, Lester. Janine, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Sure. I think sometimes learning about our disability will help better working relationship of working as a team. Being kind, listening, checking in with us to see what we need when no one's around. I had one professor who would always say, oh, Janine, do you need anything? Do you need any additional time? Do you need any help? And it was actually in front of other students, and that was very disheartening. I appreciate that the professor was wanting to help me, but it just wasn't at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
So being kind, checking in, listening, getting to know us, asking us what we need or what you can do to support us is going to make a difference in our world.
Mm-hmm. Thank you both so much. There was a question in the chat that kind of relates to some of this conversation right now. What are the most effective online resource strategies? One-to-one sessions with instructor, discussion boards with fellow students, links to additional resources, or something else? What has been successful in your experience with these online courses?
I'd like to answer that one.
Okay, go ahead.
One-on-one communication with professors has been extremely helpful. feeling comfortable with reaching out to them and asking for a quick Zoom session for just, some more guidance on what they're looking for in an assignment. Because oftentimes I find that the quick little blurbs that they put on the syllabus or on Blackboard about what the assignment is, I need more description and more guidance on what exactly they're looking for. And so having those one-on-one Zoom sessions where I can say, okay, this is where I was going with it. Is this the correct what you guys are looking for? And then having open communication with classmates and being able to communicate with them on, hey, this is what I'm doing. Do you think I'm on the right track? And having that reassurance from them of, oh, I'm doing the exact same thing. So either both of us are off or, yeah, we're on the right track. So yeah, sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. Those are important ways that we can connect with getting our questions answered, and with the online format, it is a little bit different than being able to go face to face with either your faculty or your fellow students. So thanks so much for sharing those.
I have a quick comment.
Go ahead, Katie.
I think too, also, if needed, having the option of having some notes or PowerPoints prior to the class, to where we can either create what we need to have those notes to follow along, can help make a difference too during the class, instead of just listening and taking notes. Some people do better by hearing and others do better by sight.
Certainly, yes, thank you. Those you're kind of touching on some universal design and accessibility features for courses. So thank you so much. So our next question, we've already kind of touched a little bit on this in some of the questions that our audience has been asking, but I did want to see if there was anything else that our panelists would like to share about their experience with online learning for the last year and a half. I think some of the things that we've talked about are some of the challenges, but I am curious about what some of the successes are. So if anyone on the panel would like to respond to this, please feel free to.
First of all, I have already talked about the struggles, but the success was learning more about my personal learning style and being able to have more freedom on how I completed assignments, since a lot of professors, especially when COVID first hit, decided to restructure how their courses were presented because they realized that they didn't work over Zoom. And so I had professors decide to let us submit papers as presentations, or papers where we could present what we found to them verbally. And I found that I thrived a lot more when I was given freedom to choose how I completed assignments.
Thank you. And I think Janine, did you also want to answer this question?
I think everyone summed it up pretty good. So.
Okay. Sometimes that happens on a panel, but thank you for agreeing. I appreciate that. So there's been just a couple things in the chat that are kind of coming up. And so one of our faculty members would like to hold a panel for convocation, which is for a faculty convocation at some point. And this might be a helpful way to kind of approach some of these things that faculty also might need to know. And then there's been ensuring that there's multiple forms of representation and ensuring that all materials are accessible at the start instead of trying to make them accessible later. It can be a little bit more pressure. So thank you for those comments, everyone. Our next question is, what would be some guidance you would give to students with disabilities who are hesitant to engage with disability services? Katie Lester and Katie Ferguson had said they'd like to answer this question.
Yeah, the big thing that I would have to say is that advocacy can get easier. There's going to be ups and downs, just like anything in life. But if you don't start advocating for yourself, it's a lot harder for others to know what's going on, what you need. And if you start here in the education system, then you're gonna have a little bit more help with multiple heads thinking together to work things out before you approach in the work field. Because sometimes it's going to be a lot more challenging if others for work. It's like this is really expensive software, but you need the speech software program. Learning to know the different software programs or different ways to advocate and say, I need this or this, let's do it this way, and still be successful and complete the task will help you further in life, and not just in work and school, but anything else that in your life. It'll help you out in so many ways.
Thank you, Katie.
Just like telling them that like students who are hesitant, just that the people with disabilities, at least at UAS, are incredibly nice and are willing to like sit down and come up with some ideas for accommodations, and always willing to like, this isn't working, can we figure something else out, and just being willing to work with the students. And they're not going to judge you, and they're not going to tell anybody it's confidential, but just tell them that it is worth it for them to go and at least have a chat with them and try to come up with some ideas that might help.
Thank you so much. At least in my experience of working with disability and in disability services, at times students can feel really stuck, and a conversation with disability services can maybe help provide some options with technology, or maybe a different way of approaching an assignment or something along those lines. And so we really do try to have that individual conversation that's safe and confidential. So those are some of the things that we really try to promote for our students. And I hear, Katie, that both Katies have kind of talked a little bit about that. So thank you both. Anyone else from our panel? Would you like to answer this question? Okay, so we'll move on to our last question, and then we'll save some time for questions from our audience. I've tried to kind of address them as we go, but if there are any other questions, know that this is our last question. For the panel, please share an experience where an accommodation made a difference in accessing your education. Martha, Janine, and Katie Ferguson had said that they'd like to answer this question.
So I guess I'll start. Being able to just, my biggest thing is being able to use a calculator when I do math, regardless if the course says to or not, just because it saves time and effort, and it doesn't kill my brain as fast as not having that. And just being able to have that accommodation has helped. And I have asked a couple times for an extension on the assignment, just give me another day, has helped, just because I've been struggling on what to think of, and I've gotten on a roll, but it's 11:59 and it's due at midnight, and just needing that extra time, just it'll get done, I just need a little bit more time. And that has helped a lot.
Thank you, Katie.
I can go next.
Okay, go ahead.
So first of all, I just think in general, having accommodations has enabled me to get a college education. I don't know if without the time, the extra time on assignments, the extra time on tests, one of my accommodations is in class coursework not being graded for spelling errors. So if we're in class and we're doing quick writing assignments or anything, particularly it was relevant to an undergraduate, that spelling errors weren't taken off. But being able to have a couple extra days on assignments allows me to turn in quality work that I can be proud of, because I do write slower than neurotypical students, because that is part of my learning disability. And so having the time to really make sure that I'm turning in work that I'm proud of and that I am capable of has allowed me to continue my education and continually prove that I am able, that I'm worthy of being in the master's program.
I think Martha said it best. Without accommodations, surviving university would not be possible. I need the extended time on my writing assignments, like Martha said. It takes me a while to compose my thoughts. It takes me a while to edit them. It takes me a while to go through them. Additional time on tests makes it me so I don't freak out. It makes me have the time to calm myself down and have the time to process the information that is in front of me. We need the time, is what it comes down to, or the small group accommodation for testing to be successful and to turn in quality work that we are capable of doing.
Thank you so much, Janine. Very important points from all of our panelists. And I want to open it up to see if anyone else would like to ask a question or respond to this. Katie, Lester, if you feel comfortable responding to this, feel free to. If not, that's okay.
Sure, yeah, I can respond. The accommodations definitely make a huge difference. The big one is a lot of the others have already mentioned, but one of the ones that I've also requested and worked out with my instructors is navigating with a service animal. A lot of classes are booked with 15-minute increments in between. And I get some of the reasons why they do that to a certain degree, but sometimes depending on where you're going and if your classes are together, it's not enough time, especially if you have a service animal, to take care of them, give them water, give them some bathroom relief. Sometimes even if you have a really long day, to de-stress them out. And DSS and my instructors have been really helpful and really working with me on that. So
thank you so much, Katie. In kind of closing, we have about 15 minutes left for questions, but as a recap, I appreciate our panelists being part of this conversation because they've brought together the different topics we presented and displayed how that looks for our students as well as how it supports our students. And I appreciate Martha, I appreciate Janine, I appreciate Katie Lester and Katie Ferguson in taking time to show us how it comes together, as well as that it's a continual process that we are working on and working towards, and it's always changing. So thank you all so much. Does anyone from our audience have a question for our panelists or a comment about this presentation? So there is a question that I've received. It says, DS plays a key role in these success strategies. How visible is DS on each of the campuses? Example, how did a panelist initially hear about DS? And what ways and means would they recommend the word get out? So Martha, you have your hand up.
Yes. So I was lucky enough that within the homeschool program that I was a part of, one of the contact teachers, her son was a student with UAF's Disability Services. So before I started at UAF, once I was accepted, she reached out to me and told me to reach out to UAF Disability Services. And I know Amber and I have had a conversation about this, that though on UAF, unless you're aware of disability services, it's not the most visible, and it's not disability services fault. It's how campus is laid out, and also how even finding disability services on the UAF website is extremely difficult. It is hidden in there. So unless you know to go looking for it and where to find it, it's not the most accessible department on campus. It's almost kind of like UAF is hiding it. And so unless you know you need to reach out to them, it's not something that students who maybe are unaware that they qualify for services or are unaware of how to seek out those services could find easily.
Thank you, Martha. Janine, you had your hand up.
Yes. So as you guys know, I've been receiving services since I was 6. So after I left UF, I wasn't sure if I was going to go back to school, never planned on it. So it took me a while to find where disability services was located on the website and to find the contact information. I have to say DS was very supportive and helpful at setting up. I have to say I've had much better experience receiving services through DS than I did at the University of Alaska Southeast than I did at the University of Florida. I just wanted to give them a shout out. I didn't feel like I was a number. I felt like I was listened to and I felt like I was heard. But again, I'm not on campus to see how visible the sign was, but on the website and finding the information did take me a while to locate. So if I was a new student and not used to and just probably new to my combinations, it probably would be extremely overwhelming for me.
Thank you, Janine. Katie Ferguson, you had your hand up, and then I think Katie Lester, I saw you had your hand up, but then you took it down. So if you would like to answer, we can have you answer after Katie Ferguson.
So I heard about disability services from my contact teacher and my mom, because I was in high school when I first started college classes. My mom found it on the website and wrote the initial email. But it is hidden on campus and it is hidden on the website. Like, yeah, we see it on the tour, but no one pays attention to the orientation tour, let's be honest. So maybe just putting signs like in like the cafeterias and in the dorms, just like this is where we're located, and this is the email. Just getting the word out more, I think, would help, and not being just a little plaque on top of a door with small writing would be helpful.
Very good feedback. Thank you so much. Duly noted from the UAS campus, by the way, on both of those panelists. I appreciate so much your honesty. Katie Lester, would you like to answer?
Yeah, I had a different experience when I was getting started and looking at coming to UAA or going to school, period. DVR, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, has wanted a plan and stuff, and so I had gone to talk to Kathy with the social work program, and because that's what I was interested in. And when I went to go see, there were 2 staff members from the Alaska Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired, Nate and Elijah, that went with me. Elijah is the O&M instructor as well, Low Vision Clinic, and he gave me some O&M, which is orientation and mobility instructions on campus for a basic rundown. And disabilities was one of the locations that they showed us where it was, and walked in and said hi and introduced me to a few people. And the visibility wise, I was able to tell the difference because of they did a floor change at the Anchorage UAA. So Rasmussen Hall usually has carpet, but there's a change in the flooring in front of the DSS office. And so that was really helpful for me before I received my guide dog, and he now knows when I need to go there, that's where he takes me. He's already learned that location. So I have to thank Elijah and Nate for going with me and talking to me about it. And so hopeful that this campus was really easy to find at that time.
Thank you so much, Katie. So we've had a couple comments from our audience saying thank you for sharing your experiences, as well as that it's so meaningful and helpful to hear these experiences from students and their perspectives. There's one comment. I don't know if this is still a thing, but there used to be an open house kind of event for high school students and parents to visit campus. Perhaps the department can join effort with this event. So comment on visibility and at least on the UAS campus, pardon me, we do try to participate in a lot of the high school events and be a presence on campus at that time. I don't know if UAF and UAA do that as well, but usually we do want to try to help students get connected from high school to college, because there are some differences between those types of accommodations that can be provided to students, and we want to ensure that this incoming students understand that process. So I don't know if someone from UAA or UAF would like to answer that or respond to that.
So this is Amber at UAF. I'm the Director of Disability Services here. And we do participate in our orientation programs and our Inside Out, which is the high school students visiting the college campuses for UAF. And so we do participate in those events as much as possible. So it is nice to hear that that's a good spot for us to make sure that we continue to be part of. Staffing has changed in those offices a little bit over the last couple of years. So we work to continue to make sure that they remember to include us. Yeah, it is a good spot to connect with students. The orientation events with all of the resource fairs that they do, we do end up talking with a lot of incoming students who are trying to get that information, and we would love to talk with them prior to them arriving on campus so that we can start getting them set up with our office. But that's what we do at UAF.
And UAA is part of the Seawolf Ready program, where we connect with the high school students, graduating seniors, and introduce them to our office as well. We also participate in new student orientation, trying to ramp up our getting the word out. And I love the idea of putting signs up in the dorms. So thank you for that.
Very good feedback from our panelists about what might be another way to kind of advertise a little bit more, as well as be more of a presence on campus. Thank you. There was one comment that from UAA perspective, they appreciated Katie Lester knowing that the tactile threshold has been beneficial. So thank you for making a comment on that. And just very appreciative of this discussion. So thank you all again. Lorraine has posted information about orientation for any UAA folks. So if you have any interest in seeing what that looks like, Lorraine has some information about that. And then one other comment, if faculty members aren't familiar with disability services or working with students with a disability, this can be an intimidating experience for them as well. Please don't feel discouraged if faculty members aren't responsive right away. Some of them might need some time to wrap themselves around the idea. It's definitely a combined effort, so keep advocating for yourselves. Important information. Had some essential conversations, very engaging and enlightening. Thank you for your candor and participation today. Extremely valuable. Some more appreciation and thanks for our panelists and sharing that information. So it doesn't seem like there's any other questions at this point, but I do want to thank our panelists once again for taking time and volunteering their time today to give us some perspective on their experiences, as well as talk about how this all comes together.
And there were a couple of more comments in the chat for our panelists. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Thank you so much, panelists. You've taught me so much today. I'm very grateful. Thank you. It's been a great experience and hope to see you next year.
Just kind of echoing all the comments in the chat. Thank you for the opportunity to hear from our students and the presenters.
Thank you to everyone. This was incredible. Thank you so much. Today's panelists provided very helpful insight. Big thanks for the honesty. And then Martha has shared. Thank you for listening to us and being so open.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here, Katie. Thank you, Janine and Katie Ferguson as well. And Martha, thank you so much. We really appreciate you all being here.